Good evening, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to another session of DSG Energy, the webinar series. The name suggests that we are going to talk about the role of photovoltaics and solar energy in combating the threat of climate change, starting with the very generic idea, the very factual statement that globally speaking, everything we have in life and everything we do in life, whether we are talking about fulfilling the basic necessities or we are talking about having a luxurious life, everything now requires energy. And where चाहे हम we are talking about cooking some meals or lighting up the appliances or mobility and transportation or just warming or cooling up our spaces, because of all of these, the reliance of on the fossil fuels and the reliance on having the energy increased, energy and demand have been increased to quite a lot, and because of that we are having a very negative impact on our environment. The issue stays the same. And if we start looking at the daily reports, if we start looking at the daily scientific studies that we come across that demonstrate the increasingly high onset of climate change in our lives, it feels a little helpless. But at the same time, there are reasons to move forward. There is still reason to hope and have a solution. So, for that purpose, in order to discuss how the climate change is affecting our natural resources as well, जिसकी वजह से हमारा climate change cause हो रहा है, the patterns are completely shifted now. So we are inviting different guests with different exposure and very diverse exposure to share their experiences regarding academically or professionally. And we have one guest to talk about the industrial challenges that we are facing in terms of fighting the climate change and renewable energy. So I'm not going to delay and I'm just going to invite the guest to the session. Assalamu alaikum, both of you.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you for having me here.
We still have a third guest. I'm still waiting for her to come. She was a little busy, so I am just gonna start and wait until she comes. Do introduce yourself, Hera, a little. Do tell us about your academic background and the researches that you're working on right now.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for having me here. My name is Hira, and I'm a PhD scholar in Tokyo Institute of Technology. So I'm working in climate change impacts on water resources in Pakistan. So mainly I do like what the climate change is doing to our environment, the detrimental effects, and how it is how Pakistan is really vulnerable to these changes. So I mainly focus on what the future temperature in the next 100 year will be in Pakistan. What is the situation of historical rainfall? How it is changing over the time, and how it's gonna change in next 100 years, and if it's gonna have a flooding effect or a drought effect in the Indus River Basin or in the Pakistan, and how it's changing. The It's also affecting the volcanic eruptions around the world. It's melting ice caps. It's causing sea level rise and many other effects. So why climate change happens, I've been studying about like how much emission is going to affect how much climate change in the future, and what can we do to adapt to it, and what can we do to mitigate the effects of climate change. So that's what I do.
Talha, do introduce yourself as well with a little bit of your background and knowledge.
थैंक यू सो मच शिवसा फॉर हैविंग मी हेयर। मैं बेसिकली यहाँ डीएससी एनर्जी में सेल्स डिपार्टमेंट में होता हूँ और इसके अलावा जो है थोड़ी बहुत रिसर्च मेरी दिन के वक्त तो सेल्स वगैरह होती हैं और रात के वक्त थोड़ी बहुत क्या लें रिसर्च वगैरह करता रहता हूँ क्या टेक्नोलॉजी आ चुकी हुई है सोलर में और इसके आगे क्या फ्यूचर प्रॉस्पेक्ट्स हैं।
Okay, welcome both of you to the guest, and I'm just going to start with the general idea. Hera, you have been studying the climate change and the effect that it has on the water resources, and ultimately, just talking about Pakistan currently, the natural disasters are always on the rise. Flooding, droughts, हम जिस चीज की भी बात करें, they are having a very negative escalation or negative rise in our climate change patterns now. What do you think if you talk about climate change and how it's impacting the daily lifestyle, considering that pattern of human activities and considering the patterns that generally is happening because of the global warming? What's the prediction of the upcoming century as you have studied, and you can give us the stats?
So the prediction of upcoming century, if we do nothing, if we keep on doing the industrialization as it has been happening, especially in the US, in China, if they don't do anything to combat it, then it's expected that the temperature is going to rise by 5 to 6 degrees Celsius worldwide by the end of the century. And in Pakistan, especially, the temperature is expected to rise 4.8 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. And
Not a small amount, yeah.
yeah, that's quite a lot amount because with 1 degree increase in the temperature, there is a 7% increase in humidity in the humid areas and 7% increase in dryness in the dry areas. So the temperature is going to change that much, then our wetter areas, which are in the north, they will become wetter. There will be more floods. And in the southern part, where we have the desert, where there is Thar and Thal in Rajasthan, is going to be actually more drier because the temperature will be too much and there will be too much evaporation from the soil. So there will be less water there. But then on the north, there will be a lot of glacier melt because the temperature is higher than normal. So when there is a lot of glacier melt, there will be flash floods. So that's
I
how
think that's
yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
how it
yeah,
is
sure.
still affecting our life. Like we saw last year in August 2022, what happened, especially in Sawat Kalam, we saw there was a massive flood. So that was also because of the climate change.
I'm just gonna interrupt a little and welcome the fourth guest. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sair. How are you? You're muted. I can't hear you yet.
Okay, I just unmuted myself. I hope you can listen to me now.
Yeah, yeah, you can.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Apologies for being late, but I was just stuck in another commitment and I tried to
No, no,
be
that
here as soon as I could.
yeah, that happens.
Starting
I
with
think वो
that,
live वाला session होता है तो वो ऊपर नीचे commitments हो जाती हैं. So we just started our session and we just started talking about climate change. I would like it before I proceed with the next discussion or I proceed with the next topic. I would like you to introduce a little about your research and about your experience regarding the photovoltaics and climate change and energy, renewable energy.
okay, so as you know, I'm assistant professor at USP NAST, which is actually an energy engineering department, and one of our focus is obviously on renewable energy. Our major focus is on renewable energy, and obviously, renewable energy is directly linked to the climate change and how we have to combat the effects that we are witnessing in our almost daily lives now. So my research focus is actually on solar cells, and I majorly work in materials that are for advanced generation of photovoltaics, that is the third generation. But definitely we also work on the existing first generation of solar cells, like polycrystalline, monocrystalline silicon solar cells, and how we can like we've been playing our part on how we can enhance their use, their role in the energy mix by collaborating with different government organizations and industries in Pakistan, and how we can actually make it better for Pakistan. So this is what we are majorly focused as collectively in this department.
Right. Coming to you, Talha, as the Hira was discussing about the effects of climate change on the water resource and what's the prediction about the water as a resource in Pakistan. I would like to give us a little bit of the idea about the urgency, considering the industrial point of view as well. That what's the urgency of management, the urgency of adaptation and mitigation that is required right now to reduce the overall carbon footprint. Why don't you tell something about this?
अच्छा, सबसे पहले तो मेरे ख्याल से आपको अंडरस्टैंड करना होगा कि क्लाइमेट चेंज बेसिकली है क्या। उस पे मैं थोड़ा सा बताऊंगा कि क्लाइमेट चेंज बेसिकली क्या है। कि आपकी ग्लोबल वार्मिंग बड़ा कॉमन फिनोमेना है, हर एक को पता होता है। अब ग्लोबल वार्मिंग होती क्या है, क्यों होती है? ग्लोबल वार्मिंग बेसिकली होती है ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस की वजह से। इसमें मेनली कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड वगैरह, आपके फ्यूल कंबस्शन इंजन्स वगैरह, आपका जो थर्मल पावर प्लांट्स है वो कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड एमिट करते हैं। एक नॉर्मल लेवल अर्थ का होता ही है कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड का, मगर जब वो एक्सीड कर जाता है तो ये ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस क्या करती हैं, हीट एनर्जी एब्जॉर्ब कर लेती हैं, एस्केप नहीं होने देती। कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड ज़्यादा होने की वजह से आपकी ग्लोबल वार्मिंग हो रही है। और इसके इफेक्ट्स क्या हैं? इफेक्ट्स में जिस तरह से पहले भी डिस्कस किया कि आपके जो नॉर्दर्न एरियाज हैं जहाँ पे ग्लेशियर्स वगैरह वो ज़्यादा पिघलेंगे। ज़्यादा पिघलने की वजह से ज़ाहिर है आपकी फिर एक तो वो फ्लडिंग वगैरह की तरफ भी जाएगा, बारिश वगैरह की वजह से। इसके अलावा आपका सी लेवल भी ऊपर होगा। तो इसके इफेक्ट्स तो आप अभी से देखना शुरू हो गए हैं। जिस तरह आपने लास्ट ईयर में एक फ्लड देखा था जिससे काफ़ी तबाही आ गई थी, तो इफेक्ट्स हमें नज़र आना शुरू हो गए हैं। हमें अर्जेंटली जो है इसके ऊपर स्टेप्स लेने होंगे। उनमें से एक स्टेप ये होता है कि आप सोलर पावर प्लांट की तरफ जाएं, जिसको हम आई बिलीव इस वेबिनार में आगे जाके डिस्कस भी करेंगे, किस तरह से सोलर पावर प्लांट्स इसको केटर कर सकते हैं।
Okay. Hira, so while you're studying the effect of climate change on water resources specifically, जब हम किसी चीज को अंडरस्टैंड करने की बात करते हैं तो देर इज अ टर्म कॉल्ड स्टैट्स, जिस पे फैक्ट्स एंड फिगर्स, एंड व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट स्टैट्स देर इज ऑलवेज अ हिट राइट देयर। हमें चीजें ज्यादा समझ आने लग जाती हैं व्हेन वी हैव स्टैट्स राइट इन फ्रंट ऑफ अस. So do tell us about the stats of this consistently increasing carbon in our atmosphere. What negative effect it's causing on our global warming and climate change overall.
So carbon emissions has been increasing since industrialization started, since 1970s. So 1950s tak there was no carbon in the atmosphere. It was around like 5 billion metric tons of carbon in the air. So just 5 in 1950s, and now it's 37. So from 5 to 37, it has increased 700%. And it is all because of the industrialization being carried out in the G7 countries mainly. The top 10 emitters जो हैं वो US, Canada, China, India. So 70% of the carbon is emitted actually by those countries. Or Pakistan actually is a developing country, so we are only contributing 0.5% to the carbon emissions right now. लेकिन the most of the carbon is emitting by China and India these days. तो जिस तरह उन्होंने तलहा ने कहा है कि when carbon is too much, it creates a blanket over the atmosphere. So the warm heat from the sun, it remains inside. तो जिसकी वजह से ग्लोबल वार्मिंग होती है, और ग्लोबल वार्मिंग के अलावा आपके रेनफॉल पैटर्न्स चेंज होते हैं, जिसकी वजह से ज़्यादा तबाही आती है.
Right. Dr. Seher, climate change is itself is a very complex phenomena because it has a lot of causes, not just one. But because, like, specifically talking about renewable energy, or specifically talking about solar energy, out of that, shifting from conventional or fossil fuels to solar energy can help a lot of problems, or can solve a lot of problems regarding the climate change. Do tell us about your experience, how you have, because if we look in the past decade, there's a lot of upgradation in the efficiency and advancement in technology, and obviously it is helping us somewhere. That's why we are reaching gradually to that level. Do share with us about the advancement in the solar energy department, how we have reached there, and how can we benefit to the maximum out of it.
Okay, so first, when we are talking about climate change, so we know that who our enemy is. So in the first place, it is the carbon emissions, of course, and the SOxes and NOxes, the GHG emissions that we call say so. The phenomena has been explained by the rest two of the guests. What solar energy in our department is playing the part. Okay, so if let's talk about Pakistan. Of course, Pakistan is not contributing to the climate change significantly, but unfortunately, we are significantly experiencing the effects of climate change. The recent flood that we witnessed, it was one of the worst, and many other things. You look at the temperatures. The March has not even started, and I'm here in Islamabad, and it's pretty hot. Way too much for the temperatures of the February, and it is all over the world. And of course, if any country is producing enough GHG emissions or not, but the effect is being experienced in terms of floods, in terms of heat waves, cold waves, storms, tsunamis, avalanche, and there are some research that connect earthquakes to this as well. So collectively, we have to switch towards renewables, and we are already very late. We can just make it more late and worse for our upcoming generations, but I'm telling you, we are already very late. Initially, if I talk about Pakistan, so when this technology started, in the last decade, when it came to Pakistan, people realized that we have to switch to it. So major motivation for Pakistani people was the bill, the electricity bill that we get. We were not really aware, and of course, because we really don't contribute much to the GHG emissions, so we didn't have this clean climate sort of concept. We wanted to switch because of the bills that we were getting. So initially, it was estimated by the government that not more than 5% of the energy or the electricity that we produce should be coming from the renewables, because it will, and especially the solar and wind, because solar and wind are major energy contributors, renewable energy contributors right now. So the government was aligned that more than 5% will create a lot of difficulty or effect on the grid. So later in around 2018, World Bank, it did a survey and it told us that Pakistan can go up to 30%. And if it goes up to 30%, it has a capacity of installing around 24,000 megawatts of solar power in Pakistan. And I just want to add a very good point here, that if Pakistan switch towards solar energy, only by covering 0.7% of the area of Pakistan, we can cover up our energy needs, right? By solar panels. Anyway, so it was given, the report was submitted to the government, and it was told that if we could increase the capacity to 30%, which is around 24,000 megawatts, up till by 2030, Pakistan's fuel savings will be somewhere around 5 billion over 20 years, $5 billion US dollars. So it has been, we have this solar power park, PV park in Qaid-e-Azam, which is called Qaid-e-Azam Solar Park in Bahawalpur, and that's my city, and I just forgot the name, in Bahawalpur. So that is producing around, it has a potential of producing somewhere around energy in gigawatts. So we are slowly, and people now, and especially now when the fuel is quite expensive, they are again thinking and shifting towards the solar generation. There are many challenges that I think is not relevant right now to this question, but the people are aware and the government is aware, and there are efforts that are put in place. Especially there was a conference just 3-4 days back where it was suggested to convert all the tube wells.
Yeah, she's back. For a second, we lost you. We can see you now. Okay, I'm just gonna wait for another minute. Okay, so when Dr. Saher was communicating again the stats and figures of if we just have the calculated amount, we just need to utilize 0.7% of our area, and how much money we are saving out of that, and how much carbon footprint we are reducing in the environment, shows that it's still, I think it is an underestimated role that we are considering ke how solar energy can benefit, kaise if we would just switch to solar energy from the conventional, how it is going to give us a lot of benefits. Why is it still underestimated area mein? Talha, you're working in solar energy sector and you deal with the from domestic to industrial level of solar energy shift. Why do you think it's still underestimated, the role and how it can play a very big part in combating the climate change? I hope you can hear me. Drawbacks of having a live webinar. Talha, can you hear me?
अब आवाज आ रही है?
Okay, so just gonna repeat a little question, that while Dr. Sahib was talking about how little utilization of our space, you can hear me, right?
जी जी।
Okay, so how the little utilization of our space can save us millions of dollars, and how it can save us a lot, millions of tons of carbon footprint in the atmosphere. Why do we still need to work on the solar energy shift as a necessity now in Pakistan, for example?
इसके दो पर्सपेक्टिव्स हैं। एक अगर मैं क्लाइमेट चेंज के हवाले से बोलूं तो वो तो ये है कि सोलर सिस्टम्स या सोलर एनर्जी पावर प्लांट्स जो हैं वो डायरेक्टली रिप्लेस करते हैं थर्मल पावर प्लांट्स को। उसके
Hmm.
थ्रू आप बेसिकली अपना कार्बन फुटप्रिंट रिड्यूस कर रहे हैं। दूसरा,
Hmm.
अगर इंडस्ट्रियल और डोमेस्टिक लेवल पे बात करूं कि क्यों हमें जाना चाहिए सोलर पावर प्लांट की तरफ,
Hmm.
उसका एक मेन रीज़न जो कई जगह डिस्कस नहीं होती है वो ये है कि सोलर पावर प्लांट की स्केलेबिलिटी। आप कोई भी थर्मल पावर प्लांट अगर कहीं पे लगाते हैं तो उसके लिए आपको काफ़ी जगह रिक्वायर्ड है, और एक सर्टेन कैपेसिटी का ही आप थर्मल पावर प्लांट लगा सकते हैं। सोलर के केस में ऐसा नहीं है। आप एक घर की छत से लेके एक बहुत
Hmm.
बड़े लैंड पे भी आप सोलर सिस्टम लगा सकते हैं। इसको स्केल कर सकते हैं 1 to 2 किलोवाट से लेके अप टू हंड्रेड्स ऑफ मेगावाट्स।
Hmm. Okay, coming back to the water as a resource, Hira, I've studied some of your case studies as well. Obviously, as a PhD scholar, you would be working on a lot of case studies considering the water as a resource, energy resource. Do share with us, let's per se, Pakistani perspective. So, do share with us about the latest studies you have done and latest stats that you have covered and studies that shows the vulnerability of Pakistan in terms of climate change.
So Pakistan currently is eighth most vulnerable country in the world when it comes to climate change. तो climate change का effect जिन भी countries में इस वक्त है, पाकिस्तान उनमें top 8 में आता है
Hmm.
because of its position. तो जब भी वर्ल्ड क्लाइमेट जो है थोड़ा सा ऊपर नीचे होता है तो उससे सबसे ज़्यादा इफेक्ट जो है वो पाकिस्तान पे सबसे पहले पड़ता है.
Hmm.
And I've been studying Swat River especially, and I've been studying like the whole Pakistan, whole Indus River, upper Indus and then the lower one. So I've been noticing कि when I study the northern parts, they are going to be wetter in the future. It's
Hmm.
gonna have more rainfall and it's gonna have more glacier melt. तो जिसकी वजह से we might have a lot of floods in the first half of this century, but then at the last half of the century, we won't have enough glaciers to melt because they've already melted, most of them. So
Yeah.
it might cause drought. इसके अलावा ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम हमारा ये है कि हमारा जो वाटर सिस्टम है वो अभी इतना अच्छा मेंटेन नहीं है कि पूरे पाकिस्तान को कवर कर सके. Our
Hmm.
northern parts are more have more water. They can do the rainwater harvesting. They can do that kind of things. But then in the south, there is not enough rainfall, and some canals don't even go to some of the places. So they are completely dependent on the groundwater, and groundwater is receding because of changing climate. So when the groundwater is receding, you cannot really take clean water from the well. There will be some seawater intrusion near the coast, like in Karachi or in the south. So they will, when there is seawater intrusion, you cannot even use the groundwater.
So, considering the clarity and specifically the severity of the situation and the problem that is going to be there, we still are facing, but it's going to be very dangerous in the upcoming future. So, while we are clear about the predictions, while we are clear about what we are going to face in the immediate future, what's the solution? How can we overcome this problem?
So there could be two types of solutions when you want to combat climate change. There can be adaptation options and there can be mitigation options. So when you are talking about the solar panels, they are a mitigation option. Okay, we have to save our environment for our future generations, so we don't want to degrade it. So if we use solar panels, we don't have to generate the electricity by coal, because right now coal is the for top causes of the carbon emissions, burning coal. तो जब आप solar panels use करेंगे, you won't have to do coal. So that's a very good option for mitigation. Other options would be the adaptation options, which we are in dire need of in Pakistan because we are currently facing the problems. Of course, we want to save our Pakistan for the next 100 year or 200 years, but we also have to do something for now. So for now, we need some flood retention structures. We need some green infrastructure. We need some more forests. We need to stop deforestation, and we need a very good connection between the researchers and the politicians. So the people who are actually researching on climate change and they're telling what can we do to combat it, their research is actually put into action by some development projects.
Right. Dr. Seher, we were just talking about the how to adapt and mitigate in terms of fighting with the climate change. Coming to you as the you have more experience in terms of photovoltaics. So I would like to know in the previous decade and in the coming, let's say, 3 to 5 years, what we are looking for in terms of upgradation or advancement in the solar energy technology. How can it benefit us in a better way that we already are having?
Um, Hifza, actually, solar energy has a major part to play in combating the climate change, and in upcoming years, it is going to get better. How? By increasing its the harvesting from solar energy. So, if I have to tell you, this is unbelievable, but definitely because it is renewable. So, while producing electricity, the solar photovoltaic panels, they don't emit any GHG emissions, right? So there is no risk involved for the climate change when we are using photovoltaic panels. There are two things that I would like to mention here, that the GHGs or the environmental risks that are related to solar photovoltaics. One is during the production of the panels, we use silicon, of course. So we have to melt the silicon, and then we have to go through the doping process. Before that, we go through the purification process. So we have to heat silicon at around 1400 plus degree centigrade. The melting temperature is quite high. So definitely this high amount of melting temperature is actually gained by burning fossil fuels, right? So obviously when we are burning fossil fuels at the time, we emit radiations, the GHG emissions, and but this is collectively agreed upon that the amount of GHG emissions that are liberated at that time are nominal as compared to the fossil fuels when they are burnt in producing electricity. So if you have to kind of quantify it, that if we produce our energy using photovoltaic panels to the amount like 1000 kilowatt hour, using the solar power, of course, we reduce emissions of sulfur dioxide by around 8 pounds, nitrogen oxide by 5 pounds, and more than 1400 pounds of carbon dioxide. And it was estimated that US, because US has installed a lot of solar photovoltaic panels and they get their energy, they have actually the amount of GHG emissions or the carbon that has been absorbed by installing the renewable dependent on solar is around 2 billion trees. So it's like they have planted 2 billion trees. For future, one recommendation I told you about the tube wells, that it has been discussed that if we have around 60,000 tube wells in Pakistan. So if we can convert those tube wells to renewable energy, which is again photovoltaic is a very feasible option, it will be quite beneficial. Another thing is that our market, the global market, is actually transitioning towards the electric vehicles, and electric vehicles have to be charged using electricity. So if that electricity can come from solar panels, or they can be generated by using solar photovoltaics, it will be quite beneficial, because combustion via traffic, via cars, buses, the combustion products related to the travel, all the transportation, they adds a lot to our GHG emissions. So this is one of the recommendations. People are working on it. Our center is working on it. We have been actually advising ways on converting the petrol stations on the motorways to the charging electric charges stations that are charged using solar panels at that given space. And we are doing the feasibility analysis and recommending the policies to the government as well. So this is a way forward that I think is very important right now to focus on.
Right. Talha, जैसे डॉक्टर सहर बात कर रही हैं, she is working for a department that specifically works on renewable energy. Still, if we would compare in the previous 5 years, 6 years, or ab, the awareness has increased quite a lot. But even at this point, there's still obviously a long way to go, but there are still some solar myths, renewable energy myths, that we are unaware of. People are not aware of the things. They would just consider wo ek jagah se suna to aage wo it just passes on. I would like you to address those myths ke all of these myths are actually not true, whatever the myths there can be. Do share with that with us.
एक जो बड़ी कॉमन, क्योंकि मैं तो फील्ड में जाता रहता हूँ, एक बहुत कॉमन मिथ जो लोगों के ज़हन में यहाँ पे है वो ये है कि जितनी ज़्यादा गर्मी होगी उतनी ज़्यादा सोलर की प्रोडक्शन होगी। वो
True.
हीट को हीट को रिलेट कर देते हैं इरेडियंस के साथ। ये बिल्कुल गलत है। आपकी लाइट इंटेंसिटी जितनी होगी, इरेडियंस जितनी मौजूद होगी, उतनी ज़्यादा आपको प्रोडक्शन मिलेगी। हीट से उल्टा जो है आपके सोलर पैनल की डिग्रेडेशन हो जाती है। आपकी प्रोडक्शन कम होती है जब टेम्परेचर्स बहुत हाई हो। आपका कोई भी क्या कहते हैं सोलर पैनल है, उसकी अगर आप डेटा शीट देखें तो उसके ऊपर स्पेक्स लिखे होते हैं कि मिसाल के तौर पे अगर 500 वाट्स का पैनल है तो आपको 500 वाट्स की आउटपुट देगा, 25 डिग्री सेल्सियस टेम्परेचर, 1000 वाट पर मीटर स्क्वायर इरेडियंस एंड सेवरल अदर फैक्टर्स। तो जाहिर है जब टेम्परेचर 25 से ऊपर, एक एक सिंपल एग्जांपल दूं, आजकल जो टेक्नोलॉजी चल रही है वो कहती है कि 42 डिग्री से ऊपर जब टेम्परेचर जाएगा तो 0.3% पर डिग्री सेल्सियस उसकी ड्यूरेशन हो जाएगी। ज़ाहिर है जब लाहौर में या मुल्तान वगैरह साइड पे कहीं पे भी टेम्परेचर 42 से ऊपर जाता तो आपकी प्रोडक्शन स्लाइटली ड्रॉप होती है, मगर लोग जो एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे होते हैं कि हमें ज़्यादा प्रोडक्शन मिलेगी।
Any other myths that you come across in your daily life? Specifically, I talk about domestic sector. जो जिन्होंने domestic system लगवाने होते हैं, who wants to shift from fossil fuels to solar energy. So apart from having the idea of having reduced electricity bills, what are the myths that are associated with domestic sector?
हाँ, मिथ्स के अलावा मैं एक इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट पे यहाँ हाईलाइट करना चाहूँगा कि लोगों में अब एक अवेयरनेस हो गई है कि सोलर एनर्जी से उन्हें एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी मिल जाएगी। बाय एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी व्हाट आई मीन इज कि आप कोई भी थर्मल पावर प्लांट लगाते हैं और उसको एक फ्यूल चाहिए बर्न करने के लिए, कोल हो गया, फर्नेस ऑयल हो गया, वो आप बर्न आपको पावर मिलेगी। सोलर सिस्टम में ऐसा नहीं है। सोलर सिस्टम में आपने पैनल्स लगा लिया, अब आपके पास इनफाइनाइट रिसोर्स है सन, जो कि हर वक्त अवेलेबल हो गई अदर देन द क्लाउडी डेज। लोगों में एक ये बहुत बड़ी अवेयरनेस आ चुकी है कि मेरा एक सिक्योर मेथड है इलेक्ट्रिसिटी प्रोड्यूस करने का। तो आई थिंक दैट इज़ अ वेरी पॉजिटिव थिंग।
Yeah, that's right. Coming towards you, Hira, being a current PhD scholar, you can answer this question in a better way. Why do we have to do more research in the climate change or renewable energy? What's the point of having more and more research? What's the challenges that you face in the academic sector?
We have to do more research, especially in Pakistan, because there are not many climate scientists in Pakistan as of now. And being the eighth most vulnerable country to climate change, we are in dire need of it. We are in the case of climate emergency because we are facing floods. We are not really contributing much to the emissions, but we are the ones who are getting affected it the most. And when I look at the previous researches, I don't see many researches being done in Pakistan. Like there are a lot of researches in other countries, but when it comes to Pakistan, our monitoring system is not that developed, and there is not many research. So I think we need to do something about climate change really fast, and shift towards a more sustainable ways of generation of electricity and sustainable ways of living, because it is affecting us directly and we are not able to cope with it. Like countries like US, Canada, they are prepared for it, they can cope with it, but we as a nation, we are not that rich, or we cannot cope with the disasters. For example, with flood, it affects us more as compared to the same amount of flood if it happens in a developed country. They are able to cope with it, but us, we cannot, because we have the crops. Our GDP mainly depend on the agriculture. So if we have a change in the climate pattern, it's going to affect us more.
Yeah.
So we need to do it more than anyone else.
Um, Dr. Seher, I'll move to you with this very good point right here, that although we do not contribute a lot to our GHGs emissions or having shifted climate patterns, we still are very vulnerable, highly vulnerable towards the climate change, and our coping mechanism is not that well. So, being renewable energy researcher, being a part of USPCAS, whose main focus is to revolve around the renewable energy, how to get it better, how to fight the climate change. What are the challenges that we are facing in the academic sector per se, specifically?
Okay, Hira, before I answer this question, I would like to continue with what our guest has added to the PhD student. Sorry, what's your name?
Hira,
Sorry,
Hira,
Hira.
Hira.
Yeah, Hira has added. She's mentioned a really good point that we really need to shift towards the awareness and the study and the research that Pakistan should be focused on regarding the climate change. Around 1 in 5 people, in fact, more than one, around 25% of the population in Pakistan has no supply of electricity at all. So the dependence of their cooking, heating, cooling, it depends on burning coal, plastics, rubbers, whatever they get, right? We also have these you might have seen there are a lot of brick kilns that are being operated in Pakistan, which they say they're using coal. Coal is the dirtiest of the fuel when it comes to GHG emission. Unfortunately, they are not even using coal. They use all sorts of plastics and rubbers and everything, which is even more dirty than the coal. There are many deaths yearly because of this air pollution linked to these GHG emissions, even in domestic sector where the women, they keep on burning the coal and the fire on the woods, and they keep on using their breaths and every inhaling it, and there are a lot of deaths. Even if we are able, by awareness and by switching towards, again, the points mentioned by the Hira, if we are able to aware our women, are people who are not really into clean energy, they're not getting the energy like this, so we can make a lot of difference. Coming to the second point that you've asked, that what
Challenges.
challenges we are facing while doing research. Okay, one major challenge is, of course, our economic disruption right now that is in Pakistan. It is very difficult to do research right now because everything we have to import. The chemicals we have to import. If we have to manufacture something, we have to. There is no manufacturing industry in Pakistan. We cannot bear the cost, even if we have the industry. We make solar panels. The people will not be able to afford them, as importing them from China is way cheaper than producing them within our country. So the policies, the economic collapse of our country, the issues with the imports is actually one of the major hurdles right now. These three are the major hurdles that we are facing. If we don't have the raw material, we cannot do research, right? So although, okay, definitely we are trying different हम और aspects की तरफ जा रहे हैं, हम और research avenues देख रहे हैं, लेकिन जो हमारी मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इंडस्ट्री, अगर उसमें कोई बेहतरी आनी थी तो वो भी बिल्कुल रुकी पड़ी है हमारी इकोनॉमिक डिजास्टर की वजह से.
Right. The discussion can be very long, but we always have a limited slot of time. So I would like each one of you to have a concluding remark, and after that, I'll conclude the session. Talha.
Uh, climate change is real. Switch to solar. सिर्फ अपने लिए नहीं बल्कि बाकी सब के लिए भी.
Right. Very industrial message. Okay. Okay, Jira.
I want to use this platform to raise a little bit of awareness for everybody to study a little bit about SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and what as an individual we can do to combat climate change. Be mindful of the energy you are consuming. Be mindful of the water you are using or wasting, and you can always like do take a bicycle instead of the car all the time. You can always turn off the aircon when it's not in use, and we can do these small things which look very small, but they can make a
Yeah.
big impact.
Definitely, definitely. Ji, Dr. Seher.
So, if I'll be summarizing Talha's and Hira's conversation, Hira has really put forward really important things, and I tell my students this as well. We really don't need to install the 1,000 megawatt power to actually contribute to the GHG emissions. By switching to small things in our domestic daily lives, we can really contribute majorly. I will just give one small example because we don't have a lot of time. We use bleaching agents in our washing. We use it without any purpose, and
Yeah.
how harmful it is for our marine life, for our daily life, for our environment, we have no idea. So it's like the uniform ganda hai na bachche ka, bleach dal do. Although ki bleaching has nothing to do with cleaning, it is actually going to bleach your uniform. So there are other ways of cleaning the uniform instead of using the bleach. This is one of the examples that just supports the points raised by Hira. There is definitely a dire need to switch कि आप अपना जो भी afford कर सकते हैं, they should switch towards the solar, towards renewable energy. But the thing is कि we can do small things and we can make big changes.
Right, absolutely right. Just one small addition, just the idea of contributing individually without having any professional or academic knowledge behind the climate change and renewable energy, it can have a huge impact in our daily lives. Just Dr. Sahar ne kaha, just like the bleaching agent, I think if we would include the smart choices in our daily lives, it is going to create a big chunk of change. Just like have conserving the already existing resources, switching to smart appliances, and understanding the basic SDGs goal. They are very understandable if you just read them. Apart from them, counting the main topic of shifting to solar energy or understanding the photovoltaics importance, just the widespread adoption of solar energy in our lives, it's not only giving us a more cheaper, more reliable, and a renewable source of energy, it is also saving our environment from millions of tons of carbon footprint in the atmosphere, which is obviously going to save our future generation in the end. Also, again, which is going to be more highlighted benefit for the mass. It's like it reduces your electricity cost as well. Jiska threat every month is increasing anyway. So very grateful, all three of you, for coming and participating. It was a very insightful and informative session. Also grateful for the people who took some time out and joined us and participated in the webinar. Keep joining us, keep helping us in spreading the green and mass awareness. Again, thank you so much. I will be back with other sessions. If you have some topic in mind, do let us know. Until then, signing off. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz, thank you.